Why AI will never work for sports card grading. Alright, I worked for a grading company and they invested millions in their AI program, and they tried for a while to make it work, but there's just so many challenges involved with it and so much nuance. I'm gonna go through a bunch of reasons why it will never work. In a perfect world, all cards would have perfect 4 borders and centering would be a breeze, but that's just not the case. The first reason would be centering. Now, with trading cards, AI could possibly work. I could see it working one day because all the backs are pretty much the same on Pokemon cards, and there's really not that much difference when it comes to card to card. But for sports cards, the centering just varies so much. Like, if AI, for example, was to use the borders on this card, centering would be way off because one side and the bottom's supposed to be a lot thicker. You would measure centering by like the edge of that logo with this logo right here. I'm just gonna show a bunch of examples of cards without definite centering points. Like this card right here. This one would be pretty tricky for AI because you gotta go by that logo on the top corner, and there's no bottom reference point. You gotta kind of eyeball it. And as a grader, there's something we use. It's called like the grader call. We gotta make the call. We gotta look at a card and like kind of figure out, does it belong here? Does it supposed to look this way? And like we'll research a pretty large sample size to kind of get an idea. This card right here, it has 3 centering points. You wouldn't use the bottom. You'd use like the left to right top. You would kind of ignore the bottom edge, and the nameplate, I mean, it's supposed to be around where it is here, but like if AI was picking up the nameplate, it would be totally off. This card right here, the logo is supposed to be pushed up, but like AI might not know that. You kind of gotta go by like the nameplate and kind of just like think, does it belong here? Is it supposed to look this way? Is it pushed up? Like, we'll look at other samples to get an idea. We'll go on ComC or we'll go on eBay. But yeah, AI is not going to be able to do that. There's just too many sets out there. It's not like it's 1 or 2 sets. It's like probably hundreds of thousands of different subsets, inserts, variations. Like Flare, for example, there's a row 1, 2, and 3. The centering point, and there's the base set, and the centering point differentiates from like each level, each row. The card AI might think it's really pushed down. It's only a little pushed down. You kind of go by this edge right here and compare it to like the logo and the bottom, and you take the measurements, kind of figure it out from there. But as you can see, there's so much nuance, like the centering on this card. Excuse me. You kind of gotta look at the Dan Patrick and like figure out, is there room? Like, you don't want the letters to be cut off, and you kind of gotta look at the logo and just like go by the eye appeal. Centering on this card, same thing. There's 3 points, like left, right, and bottom to top. It's pushed a little high, but if the AI picks up the logo, the Flare logo, the centering would be way off. Certain cards you gotta go by like the brand logo. Certain cards you go by the nameplate. Certain cards you go by a certain design element. It varies so much. Like, the design in the back is not supposed to be symmetrical, so the AI might not know that. And the word high voltage is kind of cut off. You gotta go by the name and like the hoops logo, and kind of gotta use eye appeal. This would be a tricky one too. All die cuts in general would be pretty tricky for AI. There's another die cut that AI might assume is way off centered. This card right here, Finest put a peel on their cards. The way AI is set up is it just scans the card like up and down. And it doesn't do a best job on surfaces, to be honest. It's not gonna pick up like a lot of scratches. Even now, my camera's not picking up all the scratches, but like, this card has a lot more scratches than normal. Even though peels typically, cards with the peels typically have a lot of scratches, this just has way more normal. Now, AI might not pick up the scratches at all, or it might pick them up and just completely slam the card. The scratches on a card like this are not going to be weighed as heavy as if the same scratches were like on a paper card. Now, AI would have to be programmed to differentiate that, but there's just so much nuance when it comes to that. And then you look at the back of the card, AI wouldn't be able to read a card number. It wouldn't realize it's an error. It might label it as a Doc Rivers. It's not gonna know that's a refractor. Now, when like this card has a lot of bubbles, well, as mentioned, either AI is gonna realize that and slam it, or it's not gonna pick them up and like not hit you for the bubbles. Another thing is this pattern right here is mosaic refractor pattern. Let's say there was a little dent and it was like right here. You're gonna get hit for it, but when you grade, there's so much nuance that goes into it, and the eye appeal plays a big role. The grader will make a call. Like, let's say there was a ding and it goes along the edge of the basketball like pretty close and you can't really notice it. We're gonna acknowledge that that ding is there, and like we won't allow the card to be gemmed, assuming the card is perfect, that is. But if that same ding, same width, same size was somewhere more noticeable, we're gonna hit that card a lot harder. Now the damage is the same, it's just the location of the damage. And that right there, AI is not going to be able to like, they're not gonna be able to calculate that. This card right here, if you know the product, you know that a lot of these came from the factory with like the foil cracked. But then there's examples without the foil cracked. Now AI is either not gonna realize that's cracked, or it's gonna slam the card because it is cracked. I mean, you probably wouldn't gem the cracked one, and because there are examples without a crack, but at the same time, you don't want to slam it either because it's a known factory issue. Prism, for example, and Optic, they typically have like a lot of dings, those little pinches, we call them. This doesn't have any, but like, you know what I'm talking about, like those little weird pinches, you're like, damn. As mentioned, it really depends on the location of the pinch and how hard we'll hit it. Another thing is registration. You see these Prism, how it's like embossed? Some sometimes that like embossing around the prism is way off and it's below the word prism. And the card looks perfect, but it'll come back like an 8. And you don't know why. That's usually why. The AI is not going to be able to realize that it's way off registration. Another thing is these cards typically have roller lines in the back of them that come from the factory. And a certain level is allowed because it's a known issue. Either the AI is not going to pick up the roller lines or it's going to slam you for them. If there was like a really wide roller line, we're going to hate you for it. But for the most part, if there's like 3 or 4 little ones, we kind of just don't pay attention to that. On the verification end, AI wouldn't be able to pick up that this is a refractor, because that year like the edges were colorful, so it's kind of hard to realize it's a refractor. And when you turn it back, it doesn't have an R or refractor indication on it. This card, for example, the centering, like you would go off the top of the logo and you wouldn't go off the name, you'd go off the design, just like little upside down triangles. If you look at this example, it's pushed up. But if you're going by the name, the centering would be way, way off. And the centering is probably the main thing. AI would just struggle because the centering point differentiates from card to card. This card right here, AI probably, you see how my camera barely picks up that refractor line? This is how AI would pick it up. This card doesn't have one. But now you move it like in different lighting, you really see that refractor line. Like it has an effect on eye appeal, so you would hit the card and AI might completely ignore that. This is a 3D card. It's supposed to be blurry, but I'm using it as reference because like some of the older cards are off registration, kind of blurry like this. AI probably wouldn't even hit the card. It wouldn't like know to do so. This card right here, Jambalaya, if you go by any of the foil or logos on the card, you would not be able to get correct centering, but you would have to use the edges. It really depends on what AI would pick up. And also there's like a factory little nipple on the top and bottom, and that lets you know it came from a pack and it wasn't cut from a sheet. AI probably wouldn't know to look for that, and also if it did, I mean, it will hit you for it, and it's going to hit you as an edge wear versus a grader, which realizes it's supposed to have that tiny little nipple. This card right here is a Warp Tech. AI won't be able to pick that up because, as you can see, there's no indication on the card that it's anything other than a Game Day 2K. Perforated edges, AI would struggle with that. We hit these cards a little differently because we know that's how they're cut and that's how they're made. Embossing, this would present an issue. AI might slam that surface, especially in the back. It would go haywire, like what's going on here? And the registration on the embossing is really important too. You see how the black lines are pressed in. Let's say they messed up the registration and the pressing was like a little off the line. That would affect the grade, and AI might not be able to pick that up. Surface issues. These cards have like these hollow foil stars. Sometimes they fall off. AI might not be able to pick that up. Platinum medallions. These have like a surface, textured surface, and AI might just slam it or the surface. Some other things to, oh yeah, the size of the card. This could throw off centering. You see how they're like all different sizes? You could literally do that with super modern too. Like these are optic, same thing. So yeah, that's just some examples. I could go into more detail